Welcome back to my channel. Today I would like to present to you a new trick. I know it's been a while, but I'm very lucky enough and I'm very happy to learn about this new trick, and now I'm sharing with you. So a lot of times we see a start with a small knight enclosure, and then the first move you can play to set up this trick is to shoulder hit. This is obviously a very legit move. So before we go into the trick, I want to briefly talk about what is the idea behind the shoulder hit and how you should normally deal with it as black. Because I find that a lot of beginners as well as intermediate Go players don't know what to do about it. The idea behind this move is to expand white's moyo while suppressing black's moyo. The first defense for black is to crawl on the third line. This is perfectly fine move if you love territory. I do need to tell you though, that if your opponent plays the shoulder hit, he is playing for influence. And usually in a game of Go, we want to counter our opponent's idea. So we don't want to follow our opponent's idea. Our opponent is saying, hey, I want the moyo, I want to gain control of the center. And then what we're saying is, oh, please go ahead, I'm just going to take the territory. White's going to follow up with the jump here. And now white is able to expand even more in terms of moyo. So nothing wrong with crawling on third line, it's just kind of following our opponent's idea. And that's the only little problem that I see with that move. The second defense for black is to actually tanuki. And that is a very nice defense. The only problem that I see with this is that maybe some of my viewers cannot really appreciate this variation, because the next move white's gonna block down. This move not only hurts black's stone over here, but also expands towards the left. And this is actually a very nice shape. So a lot of times the very common defense is for black to respond locally and then push up. The reason behind this move is to strengthen the corner, hurting white's stone, and also countering white's idea of expanding the moyo. White will follow up with a jump over here, and now black can just safely tanuki. So black can go ahead and take whatever is big outside. And then white also accomplishes mission of expanding towards the left and then forming some influence. So these two moves temporarily are not generating any profits, but later on they will serve when any fight happens over this region, as well as ladders towards this direction. So they will show their values in later game. That's not the topic for today, but I just want to mention that as a side note. Today the trick / joseki that I want to present to you is for white to block at n3. So let's first jump to the conclusion is that this move is a very legit move. It's tricky, but in the meantime, this is a joseki move that actually very few people know. Against this move, black only has one response, that is to hane on top. Some players might play the hane on the bottom, but this is not ideal because black played an extra move on the second line, and white can just extend up, and then this move will form influence towards the left and suppress black, and then black stones seem very over-concentrated. Black's correct move is to hane on top. To follow up with your trick, you should hane over here. Now, black really wants to cut here, but I actually don't recommend anyone to cut over here, because this is going into a very tricky path for black, and this is where you can set up your tricks as white. The correct move for white to play is to hane at O2. So from first glance, this looks like a very weak move because it leaves a lot of weaknesses for white. So let's talk about them. Let's talk about each variation one at a time. So the first variation, if black blocks at p2, white can just connect. Now there's a miai situation. White's threatening to ladder the stone. If black wants to get rid of the ladder, white can now cut at p3. Black is forced to connect here because there's a double Atari. So black Ataris, white runs. Black can no longer follow up, so black needs to Atari, and then Atari, and then white captures. So now white is able to capture black, and then drastically reduce black's territory in the corner. And then black is forced to extend over here and then protect this moyo. The problem with black here is that this moyo is not really strong. There's a weakness at m5 because white can later on drag it out. There's a peep point at p6 aiming at this cut, and there's a cutting point over here. It doesn't work temporarily because black can capture white like this. But white does not need to do anything immediately. White can just make a splitting move. And this is already good enough. So let's talk a little bit of follow-up. So black can just hop down to threaten the life and death here. White will peep first, this aiming at the cutting point. Black fixes it, and then white extend down at n1, completely live himself. Later on, if you want to take advantage of your m5 stone, you can drag it out. If you want to threaten this cutting point, you can play p6. So don't play it right now though. Play it when you play more moves on the outside. And also, if you want to take advantage of a shape like this, the correct move is for you to play this Kosumi peep. This is kind of the shape move of this. So if black plays here, we can extend up. These two stones are really nice. And of course, if black plays here, we can extend in. Black must connect here. And then we can hop back. And of course, if black just connect, then we can just hop back. And this exchange is very nice. So that's how we take advantage of black weaknesses outside. And this is a favorable position for white. So this is a definition of black falling into a trap. So we set a miai. So if you don't protect this, obviously there's a ladder. So if white can reach this position, there's a lot of potential towards the left side. This is a very nice shape. And also later on, there's a very annoying peep at q2, right? So if, for example, if ever I need to invade, I can just peep here. If you extend, I can definitely create a lot of problems for you in a corner. And of course, if black decides to just let this happen, then we're able to gain more territory and destroy more territory for black. So I hope this is this explains the first variation quite well, and you feel confident about this response at p2. The second variation is obviously, right? I think most of my viewers are probably yelling at the screen like, what do I do if black plays here? Well, white can just turn here, right? So black needs to follow up with an Atari, of course, and then white can just play like this. Now, black needs to absolutely go back and fix, right? If you play anything else, white extends out, that's just horrible for black. So black needs to go back. And now white just needs to play an extension move. And that's pretty much the end of the variation. The result is that black has a bunch of stones on the second line, right? So the only thing black can be proud of is to capture the O2 stone. But remember that you also have a stone that was captured. So not only that, when white extends here, right, white is also expanding tremendously towards the left. While what black got in compensation is really just some very tiny territory on the second line. So this is also a favorable position for white. The reason this is favorable is because black started with 2 stones, right? And then white invaded. So black was supposed to gain a huge advantage locally, but when we reached this situation, black did not really gain as much variation as he was supposed to. And of course, this stone cannot run because ladder does not work. So it's a worrisome looking move, but white does not really need to worry about it. A more fierce variation is for black to Atari. White obviously has to connect. And now this is the hard part. So if black blocks here, there's a lot of cutting points. So white can turn first. If black fixes, then we can actually just exchange one more time, and then we play out the same variation. And this is equally horrible for black. This is probably even worse after this, because black cannot even suppress white's group over here. Only thing black can do is to extend, and we follow up with the same idea. And that's pretty much the same results. And this is a favorable position for white. So at this point, black's correct move is to play the bamboo shape, right? So to leave no weaknesses, we need to play good shapes. So here, this is where white needs a Tetsuji, right? And the move that you need to remember is to play the sacrificing move, that is play K3. Against this move, if black tries to capture white, white can simply just play out this move. So now black has 3 liberties, white also has 3, so black needs to hurry up and capture. White Ataris, and then connect over here. So this would be the end of the variation. The result of this is that white is able to gain a lot of influence towards the center and the left. And then this stone is suppressing black's moyo, actually. Furthermore, there are more profits for white is that this L2 as well as L3, they're both sentes. And then white does not even need to play right now. White can save them as co-threats. So white can use them whenever he wants. So the result of this is black only got this corner, which started out as 2 stones for black first. The only thing black got was to secure the corner territory and gain some more territory over here. But how is that going to compensate? So right now, black only has 1 stone outside and white has 2. So how is that going to compensate for an extra stone, plus the influence, plus the komi? So this is a little bit tiring for black at this point. And then white's win rate is about 70% at this point. So a lot of times, sacrificing is a great idea in a game of Go, right? I know this is a little bit hard for intermediate players as well as the beginners, but you know, if you understand, if you have this mindset of sacrificing in mind, sometimes you might end up sacrificing a lot more than you're supposed to. But if you have this in mind, I'm pretty sure your level will skyrocket at some point. All right, so that's a variation. We saw the P2 does not work. Well, the P2 does not work well, I would say. The N2 does not work well. The block over here, or the Atari over here, does not work well because of a beautiful sacrifice by white. What are some of the more resilient or the best defense for black here? The best defense turns out to be this super weird Kosumi here. And I would say if your opponent has not watched my video, the probability of him finding this move is really, really small. Against this move, white needs to just play the Kosumi. When black fixed the shape over here, still with the bamboo, white just needs to crawl. And then crawl after this Atari. We just need to crawl until we have 7 stones. So at this point, black could extend, but then white can actually just Atari and then start playing somewhere else, right? Start connecting or just forget about it and just start approaching elsewhere. The reason he can do that is because this group's already alive, right? We know that 7 stones on the second line is already alive in this case. So the result of this is actually pretty good for white as well because the outside is not very strong for black. So it's not very certain what black can do with this influence. But that's more or less the most resilient defense that forces white to crawl on the second line for a few times. But I would say this is so hard to find out, right? That you probably don't need to worry too much about it. But even when black plays that like that, I already show you what to do as white. So that's kind of like all the variation that I want to present. When white plays here, am I missing anything? Yeah, okay. So black also has the variation of playing the bamboo. So the last variation we said was like this, and then we can make a sacrifice. But what if black does not exchange that? Well, if black does not play this, white can play this Atari. When black extend, we can crawl once and then play the small knight. This will get white some territory as well as the safety because white is already alive. Black needs to ladder the stone and then we can just split in the middle. This is a very important move for this kind of formation. It really breaks the moyo. And later on, the problem is more or less the same. There's an Atari over here. So for example, there's an Atari over here. And there later on, not right now, but later on, you can also harass black's position like this. So that's quite interesting exchanges to make for white. So that's also a very nice position for white. So we said about the tricky path that you can sort of make your opponent go into. But what is the correct defense for black? The correct defense is a very simple one. It's just for black to extend. Against this move, white is going to Hane connect. And that's pretty much the end of variation after black turns and then white extends. Black's going to develop towards the top side, and then white gained a lot of compensation towards the left, and the game is pretty much equal at this point. Black can think about expanding himself with a knight's move. Black can think about coming in and then starting a fight over here. That's also fantastic. Yeah, so against this, you know, there's going to be a fight between this group and this group. So yeah, that's how black should play out to reach an equal position. The only annoying thing is that this Q2, as I have presented, is always a very annoying thing later on for black. And black does not have time to fix right now because the outside is too big to miss. So that's the great thing about this variation, right? So later on, at some point in your end game, this is a very, very annoying move. As I said, you know, you can go into this and probably black's gonna lose entire corner. But if black does not want to, there's this that white can get in Sente, so this is quite huge. So yeah, that's kind of like a little follow-up, a little secret weapon that you can that you can use towards the end game as well. All right, so a very neat trick that I learned recently myself, and this is variation that happened in professional games. So feel free to use them in your casual games as well as in serious games. This has been verified by professionals. It has been verified by AI, and it's not widely used, but I think commonly used in professional tournaments as well. So just a little bit of memorization to do, especially with this variation, and I think you can impress your opponent in your game. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's been a while that I haven't issued tricks, mostly because I guess it's really hard to find tricks nowadays with AI. But I'm glad I found this one, and I hope I can find more in the future. If you liked the video, give a thumb up and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next trick, and I'll see you in the next time.